All right, how's it going, everyone? Hope you're all doing well. So here we are back again for round two. This is another developer interview that I've found. It's 5 days old, and I'm only just being made. I'm only just finding it. To be honest with you, I thought it was the same as the other one, but it's different. But we got the same team back, the trio. We've got Nate the Great McDonald, Ramen 60 FPS Bassi, and Jazz Pirates of the Caribbean Bruzo. There's a bunch of nicknames for this guy. I'm calling him Wish Orlando Bloom, just Jazzy Jeff, or I don't know, Pirates of the Caribbean. And then we got the host, Curtis Calhoun, who, after a quick Google search, just reveals that he's a MMA reporter. And this is, I don't know if this is his channel. It's a relatively new channel by the looks of things. Anyway, so after us winning the first round, I think we got a pretty convincing 10-8 round in the last video. We dropped the EA devs Strickland versus Adesanya style, but the devs are coming back out for round two, and they're ready to try and steal a round. So let's see if anything different is brought up. Just in the title here, it's like previews upcoming game, new features, plans for PC port, and cover athletes. So, and just before I get into this, for anyone who thinks that I'm just trying to deliberately hate on this game to be trendy and hate on a game that's not even out yet, you couldn't be any more wrong. I've been a long-time MMA fan for as early as 2002, when MMA was relatively unknown in the UK. So I've got I've waited for a really good mixed martial arts representation game for all that time, and I still don't believe that we've ever had it. So I want this game to be good just as much as you guys do. Same for like Undisputed. I wanted that game to be good, and I still do. But it doesn't mean I can't make fun of it if it's not that great, you know what I mean? So get that out your head. I want this to be good, but the reality of it is it's probably not going to be. So there's no harm in speculating whether it's going to be good or not. Like, I see comments like that all the time saying, or making comments on something that is not even out yet. Like, that's not allowed to do. So when, as fight fans, can we not speculate on who's going to win the upcoming fights in the next UFC pay-per-view? You know, can we not speculate whether Grasso is going to win against Shevchenko because the fight's not happened yet? You know, that's a stupid fucking thing to say, that you can't speculate on something or judge something before it's even been released. So fuck off with them comments. They hate that shit. That's just brain dead fucking thinking. Anyway, let's start the video, and we'll see what happens.
This is Calhoun here with MMA News, and today I am joined by some of the developers behind UFC 5 coming up at a later date. Lots of excitement. I am joined by some of the developers. How's it going?
Sorry, pausing it already. I just love the fact that 60 FPS Ramen is pronouns have been covered up by these name templates. If you look underneath there, they've actually got the original name templates from the setup of the Zoom call, and Ramen's has been blocked. Sorry, I just thought to throw that in.
Going great.
Good.
How you doing?
Well, thank you.
I'm doing great. Thanks again for the time. First things first, I want to get your thoughts on, in terms of how UFC 5 adds to the future long-term of the EA Sports UFC franchise. Obviously, it's a very popular franchise among gamers and UFC fans. What can you tell us about what UFC 5, the role it'll play in terms of the long-term vision of the franchise?
Well, I would say from a long-term vision of the franchise standpoint, one of the big steps that we've made this year is the migration over to the Frostbite engine, right? That has allowed us to be able to do some things that we have not been able to do on the franchise prior to. So when we look at all the things that we're going to be able to do from a dynamic lighting perspective, from a character fidelity perspective, being the first EA Sports title to be able to support having strand-based hair in real-time gameplay. All of those things are going to be quite significant as we think about what not only for UFC 5, but the future of the UFC franchise is going to be, because, as mentioned in the presentation earlier today, one of the core key franchise pillars for us was around being as real as it gets. And so being able to deliver the product as real as it gets in the spirit of being, unedited, authentic MMA, that authenticity is really important to us for the future of the sport and for the future of this franchise.
All right, so I'll just chime in. So he said the thing that he's most pleased with, like with the progress of the developments, is being able to switch over to the Frostbite engine, and Pirates of the Caribbean and 60 FPS Bassi both nodded in agreement. Like that's like a big accomplishment. And then Nate the Great went on to say, from sort of the dynamic lighting is looking really good because of the Frostbite engine and this new strand-based hair physics that they all seem to be creaming their jeans over. So the two things he's pointed out are very visual, and like it's stating the obvious. I mean, we're on next gen hardware now, so it should look like $1 million. Do you know what I mean? It should look great. Like I wish he would have said there, we're pleased to be able to jump on the Frostbite engine because it's enabled us to include like new mechanics and things we've not done before in that regard. But it was things that has never been achieved before visually, you know, because they're talking about the Frostbite engine like it's the second coming of Jesus Christ. I mean, it's a pretty old engine now, like, isn't it? You know, like I was playing fucking Star Wars Battlefront, and that was 2015, and I'm sure that was on the fucking Frostbite engine, wasn't it? And the Battlefield games I think it was made for the Battlefield games, if I've heard that right. You know, it wasn't. So this has had to be adapted from first person shooters, you know, and some of the human models in those games do look good. So again, we're just focusing on like a visual thing here, and I just would have loved it if he'd said there, mechanically we've been able to do new things with the Frostbite, but it's just a visual thing. So it's like the arena lighting, you know, which makes your game look pretty and hair based physics, which, you know, could take it or leave it really, but it's all very like what's on the surface, like, and what's the first thing you're going to see when you fire the game up, or you know, you see a gameplay reveal trailer, you're obviously going to go, oh, it looks nice. And that's exactly what everyone said with the reveal trailer that dropped recently, you know, the little CGI in-game engine trailer. Everyone was like coming in their pants over how it looked. It should look like that. We're on next-gen fucking hardware. Do you know what I mean? It's like...
What are some things that gamers are going to see right away in terms of the impact that the new game engine Frostbite has on this franchise? What are gamers going to see and notice right away?
Right away, I would say, again, just from a visual standpoint, just the realism of all the lighting and the visual effects and the environments are outstanding. I think that the level of detail in the character, we've always prided ourselves a lot in how good the fighters and how good the characters look in UFC, but I think Frostbite's allowed us to take it to a whole nother level. And then I think the meta gameplay strategy that's going to be a big part of the franchise moving forward now with the real impact system. With Frostbite being able to deliver the authentic damage in the way that we're able to do now, and for us to be able to show that authentic damage to our players and create a sort of gameplay meta out of that, where, for example, like you will know whether it's visually or by the play-by-play and color commentary, if you end up with a broken nose, right? And if you have a broken nose, that is going to have a direct impact on your ability to be successful in the game. It's going to impact your stamina, and it's going to create a new strategy for the player to decide, do I need to find ways to better conserve my stamina to make it through the end of this fight, or am I not going to be able to do that? And am I just going to go for broke and try to knock out my opponent on the other side of things? So I think those are some really big key areas moving forward for us.
So he sort of did allude to there that the Frostbite engine is going to play into this new damage system that they constantly keep going to. You know, for some reason it's going to make the damage and the cuts be more like, it's going to make them be better for somehow. Like, in, you know, he alluded to there, you can have broken noses, and you're going to see visually either looking at the fighter or by the commentary, I guess, alluding to the fact that someone's nose is broken. I mean, I don't think I need like a commentary person to point out that someone's nose is broken. Like I could see that visually, you know. But so that's where he's saying it might. But again, it's like, but they're leaning in on this damage system, and so there was sort of like a mechanical, or as he kept saying, like the meta going forward. This this damage thing is going to be a big thing according to them. But once again, he brought up the visual aspect, and you know the fighters always look great. I feel the models always look great, and they're going to look even better on the next gen hardware. So, you know, that's like a surface level thing. It's the mechanics. Like, to be honest with you, if we just got a bunch of stickmen, like wireframe models, but the core gameplay mechanics, like the strikes and the ground game, was on point and everyone was happy with it, I'd just play that. Like, obviously I'd want fucking proper textured fighters, but what I'm getting at is, if the core gameplay is amazing, then everything else just falls into place, you know what I mean? But if we're just focusing on like surface level, what things look like, so, you know, fucking sweat and skin and, oh, do the textures look nice? I'm seeing beyond that. I want like solid MMA representation mechanics, and I know it's not going to be 1-to-1 with real life because you can't do that, but I just want reassurance that the mechanics are going to be solid, like, you know. But let's carry on.
What are some of the ways that, in terms of maybe some new gamers that haven't played any of the other UFC games, what are some ways that those that are just trying to get into the franchise and get into the UFC games, what are some options for them to, you know, familiarize themselves right away with the gameplay and all that?
Yeah, so there's quite a few tools that we've added to onboard our users. First and foremost, our career mode has an all-new onboarding experience. So we would point our newest users, go to career mode, learn the basics of our game. Our coach Davis, Valentina Shevchenko, they'll walk you through the very basics of gameplay, and they'll also onboard you into the damage and new mechanics that we're adding this year on UFC 5. And along with those tools, we've also have grapple assist. We have strike assist this year, which is new, which allows the AI to actually throw smart combinations and smart strikes for you. And all you have to do is press face button. So we've added a lot more onboarding tools for our new users, and also just the simplification of our seamless submissions. Again, it's going to change the way people play the ground game, because it's going to be, there's no more mini game that we have to onboard users into. It's essentially continue using the ground game mechanics that you've used in previous games will now complete a submission for you. So it's just all seamless, and I think it's great for newer users and returning users.
Oof, I don't know if I like the sound of what I heard there. So in terms of like new players, so I mean, with the question from, you know, Rory Calhoun here, how are we going to welcome new players to the game? So already that's got me worried. It's like, forget about veteran players or veteran MMA fans. What can we do to simplify things for the new players to come in, rather than just come in and, you know, learn how to do the submissions, and like I had to do, like you had to do when playing these games? But how can we make it easier for new players to get into the game? So 60 FPS Bassie's kind of like, you know, you'll be greeted by Shevchenko and Coach Davis. You know, who gives a fuck about that? You know, he said that in the last sentence. He's just repeating what he said verbatim, pretty much. But one thing that confused me there, and I might have to fucking pull that back, he mentioned something about AI being, obviously, veteran players. This is not going to apply to you, you know, who already or are willing to learn the game by yourself, and you don't want to have it dumbed down for you. But he was saying, like, you know, it's going to be able to like throw strikes for you, like certain kinds of strikes or like combos with the touch of a face button, and do submissions for you. You know what I mean? But hang on, let me pull that back. Actually, let's go through that whole section again. He spilled a lot of beans.
Coach Davis, Valentina Shevchenko, they'll walk you through the very basics of gameplay, and they'll also onboard you into the damage and new mechanics that we're adding this year on UFC 5.
So there again, they're bringing up the damage. Like this is a thing that they're really pleased with, and I hope it's for the better. I really do. I hope it's for the better. But they seem to be bringing this up a lot. The damage.
And along with those tools, we've also have grapple assist. We have strike assist this year, which is new, which allows.
Grapple assist. Well, that's kind of a feature that's been in all of the games. Does that just mean the grapple assist where you can switch it between sort of beginner and what was it? Like legacy or something like that, and where the right stick HUD would appear differently if you had it on like a legacy version or kind of a beginner version. Does he mean that? And he's about to talk about strike assist.
Allows the AI to actually throw smart combinations and smart strikes for you, and all you have to do is press face button.
Fucking hell. So it's going to allow the AI to throw smart strikes. Fucking hell, we're using smart terminology now. Like, fucking hell. Smart strikes and smart combination. And it's going to allow the AI, like, what? I don't understand. Is this going to be like a Mortal Kombat 11 thing where you can just sort of let the AI fight for you? Like, is that? I don't quite understand where AI comes in. How they're introducing an AI factor into it. It's confused me a little bit.
So we've added a lot more onboarding tools for our new users, and also just the simplification of our seamless submissions. Again, it's going to change the way people play the ground game, because it's going to be, there's no more mini game that we have to onboard users into. It's essentially continue using the ground game mechanics that you've used in previous games will now complete a submission for you. So it's just all seamless, and I think it's great for newer users and returning users.
So using the ground game that has been used in previous games will finish a submission for you. There, because he said the mini game's gone, but I don't understand. Like using the ground, and also when he said that, there, Jazzy Jeff did the people's eyebrow.
Strikes
like he always,
and all you have to do is press face button. So we've added a lot more onboarding tools for our new users, and also just the simplification of our seamless submissions. Again, it's going to change the way people play the ground game, because it's going to be, there's no more mini game that we have to onboard users into. It's essentially continue using the ground game mechanics that you've used in previous games will now complete a submission for you. So it's just all seamless, and I think it's great for newer users and returning users.
So I don't understand. The ground game mechanics that you've used in other UFC games will complete a. Does he mean, when he says mechanics, does he mean just the mechanic of transitioning between positions with the right stick, or does he mean actually putting a submission on? And what does it mean? It'll just do it for you. Is this for the new players who just want to use this AI thing that they've got going on? Like I say, for the rest of us who just want to actually learn the game properly, I guess that none of this applies really.
And in terms of the ground game itself, obviously, you know, as discussed in the presentation today, it seems like a completely new system and simplified in a way, right? So kind of talk to us a little bit about that in terms of what went into that decision to change the ground game element of fights on UFC 5, and what can players expect from that element?
Yeah, so essentially what we had on UFC 4 is the same foundation we're going to have in UFC 5. It's still a transition-based ground game mechanic. But
okay, I take that it's the same as when he says it's the same as UFC 4. It means like the transition. So you get the HUD on the screen with the analog stick, and you get to press up, right, down, or left to advance positions or defend against things. And I think there is actually elite gameplay thing where a piece of gameplay footage where Volkanovski is in Max Holloway's full guard, and he's just pounding him out with right straights, and you can actually see the HUD on screen, and it just looks exactly the same. So I'm guessing he just means that, you know, like he's not necessarily talking about submissions here. He's talking about the ground game transitions.
But our ground and pound got rehauled. You can get into these positions faster. 60 frames per second, essentially in gameplay, because of Frostbite, allows our inputs to be reacted to faster. So you're going to...
Sorry, I have to interrupt. 60 FPS Bassy here. Like, he's all in on the 60 FPS, but I just want to say, like, I seen a comment in the last video that I did talking whether the UFC 4 played at 30 FPS or 60 FPS. Now, to my understanding, like, I've got UFC 4 for the PS4, and I first started playing it on a PS4 Pro. Now, the game runs on a PS4 Pro at 60 FPS, except for the cage walks where you walk into the cage, and the little sequences between rounds. So like your fighter walking back to the corner, your fighter taking water on board in the corner, your fighter getting his cuts checked, corner instructions. That's all 30 FPS. The fight announcement when, you know, Herb Dean is stood between the fighters and he's about to raise somebody's arm. On the PS4 Pro, those scenes are in 30 FPS, but the fight itself and the training, that's in 60 FPS. But I believe the Xbox, I don't know if it's the Series X or the Series S, that is a full 60 FPS. Like there's a YouTuber I've seen, or if you just go and look up like Xbox footage of UFC 4, I've seen some. One guy comes to mind, Curly Cal, who used to do UFC career modes. He's playing it on an Xbox, and the whole thing is in 60 FPS, and that's like in between round stuff, end of the fight announcements, ring walks, and I'm screaming at the screen going, why couldn't we get that on PS4? But I believe on the the PS4 Pro, but I believe the original PS4, like the non-Pro version, that's 30 FPS. So the 60 FPS thing that he's getting so excited about, it's not new. Like well, at least at my experience with UFC 4, I've been playing it at 60 FPS. So how's the ground game going to get any quicker? Do you know what I'm saying? It's like I'm already experiencing a 60, and a lot of everyone else is, if you're playing it on those systems that I just mentioned, we're already experiencing a 60 FPS ground game, and everyone fucking hates the ground game. It's not the frame rate that is the problem. It's the fucking it's the mechanics of the ground game that are the problem. Like a lot of people love Undisputed 3 for a lot of reasons, but two things that game did really well right off the bat is the presentation of what it looked like. It captured the UFC to a T, and they love the ground game submission system. And every comment section that I see on UFC 5, when they're mentioning UFC 3, they just want the ground game back. Just for some reason, that just worked really well. The striking was a bit iffy in Undisputed 3. It was a bit stiff and rigid. You know, that'd need up bring it to a more modern stage. But people want that old school that grappling system that was so successful in Undisputed 3. So I'm not sure why 60 FPS is all of a sudden going to make this amazing. He loves going back to 60 FPS, this guy.
See the quickness of our gameplay and our ground game be much faster than it was on UFC 4. And at the same time, these new ground and pound strikes with our real damage, it's going to play a significant impact on the ground game and the way you're going to play on the ground. You do not want to get hit this year, essentially, on UFC 5. It's very different than on UFC 4. On UFC 4.
So when I was saying these guys are leaning heavily into the damage system, I kind of believe in a way that it's going to be different, because when he mentioned it, both of them sort of nodded in agreement. And what I take from that, it's like, obviously these guys have played the game extensively during its development, and what I'm picturing is it's like you can get knocked out pretty fucking easily in this game. You're like, that's what I think. But then when I think back to the gameplay leak, and it was just Volkanovski just smashing Max Holloway with about 6 right straights, and then he ends up getting knocked out. But I don't know, it's just the way they both kind of nodded there, as if to say, oh yeah, the damage system is a different thing, you know. So maybe this damage thing is going to be a change for the better. I don't know. Like, you know, it's going to have that sort of lethality of a fight being able to be finished pretty quickly at times if you zig when you should have zagged. But I don't know. It's just the way they both kind of nodded there, and it was the most animated they've been during the entire interview so far.
Or you would fish for health events or knockdown. On UFC 5, you're going to fish to actually hit someone because you don't want to get hit. It's going to be a completely different meta for our users and returning users as well. It's going to be great.
Unless he meant all of that was about the ground game, like you don't want to get hit on the ground. Maybe that's what he was talking about there. I don't know. But I imagine the damage things applying to stand up and ground fighting as well.
And in terms of what another thing that was mentioned during the presentation today is those that pre-ordered the game are going to get Fedor Emelianenko, Muhammad Ali, and Mike Tyson too as
Jeff doing the people's eyebrow again. Look,
fighters too. What's kind of the plan in terms of adding potentially other classic fighters to the game? Are there any long-term plans that gamers can get excited about in terms of adding other classic fighters to the game?
So I wouldn't say. I mean, we did mention that there's going to be some Bruce Lee alter egos as well. I wouldn't say that in the immediate term we have plans for classic fighters. However, through what we're planning on doing with alter egos, there's always an opportunity for us to explore potentially what's happening in a real world moment and who might be involved in that, where we could look into, is there a classic fighter that's going to make sense to bring into the game as an alter ego that ties back to this particular event that's taking place in the real world? So those will be things that we talk about all the way through the life cycle of UFC 5.
Well, that was kind of disappointing. I was hoping he'd say we might get some legends added to the game. You know, I mean, we've had legends and over previous iterations of the game, some good, some not so good, some worthy of being there, others not so much. But he just said flat out there, as of now, they've got no plans to add any classic classic fighters unless some kind of real world circumstances might be a good enough reason to shoehorn them into the game. So I guess we're getting a completely up to date roster. There's going to be no one, from years gone by that is going to be in this game.
What's kind of the role that the cover athletes will play in terms of the development of the game, post-launch? Obviously pre-launch, there's so many different elements in terms of, how the cover athletes are in the game and adding to that element of it. What's kind of the long-term plan in terms of what role the cover athletes will play in terms of adding new features to the game and all that?
Well, we know for a start, Valentina Shevchenko is going to say hello to you in the opening cutscene of the career mode. Can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, even outside of the cover athletes, with Daniel Cormier as one of our analysts, our color commentary, he's had input in the past. We take ideas from everywhere, right? Not just the fighters and the cover athletes, but also from the design council in our community, and we'll ask them the questions, we'll take the input, we'll take the feedback from a spirit of being authentic to the sport. If there are things that they're able to recognize that we aren't replicating properly in the spirit of being as real as it gets or being authentic MMA, then we'll make those updates. And yeah, if there's actual ideas that they have that are from a feature perspective, we of course will take all those ideas in and we will prioritize those amongst all the other things that we're trying to get in to the product year over year, and we go from there.
What's kind of the process in terms of adding new fighters? Because obviously, you mentioned Daniel Cormier has a lot of input in terms of fighter ratings, adding new fighters and all that. But what can you tell us in terms of some insight into what that process looks like in terms of adding new fighters to the roster?
Sure, yeah. So we're always, I mentioned it during the Q&A section, we're all big UFC fight fans on the team. So we look at a multitude of things. We'll look at who are the highest ranked fighters that we don't have in the game right now. Who are the biggest up and comers that we see that have the potential to become that future champion one day? We have really good partners at the UFC that we consult with quite frequently that help us make those decisions as well, because we don't necessarily have all of the information that they have. So it's a very collaborative relationship with the UFC as a licensor and partner, and they help inform us on where there may be some up and comers that we aren't quite as familiar with that we should be keeping our eye on. And that's really how it goes. We talk through those. We look at who's coming up in events, again in the spirit of fight week and real world events. If we see somebody who's going to be a headliner in a fight that we don't have in the game, that's somebody who will potentially get prioritized to go in later on in the life cycle of UFC 5.
Interesting. I was just thinking then as he was talking, who calls the shots on who gets added to the game? So do these guys, he's just said these are big fight MMA fight fans. They're probably casual. You can probably be a big fan of the sport but be a casual. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean you're a fucking hardcore fan. But do these guys and the rest of the team, do they sit around watching MMA, looking at young prospects, or like he said, fighters who are not in the game, and do they think, do you know what, we should put such and such in the game? He's not actually in the roster yet. Is that decision on these lads and the rest of the dev team, or does Uncle Dana make someone from UFC HQ give them a call and go, oh, by the way, lads, we've got such and such coming up through the Contender Series. I want this guy in the game. I want this woman in the game. There's a hot fighter in the middleweight division who you've still not added to the game. You guys better get him scanned or her scanned into the game or whatever. Who's dictating when and who gets put into the game? Is it these guys? Is it this team? Or is it the UFC and big wigs who are sort of connected to the game's development? I'd hedge bets that it's probably the UFC that are calling those shots, not these guys.
And another addition to the game, this turnaround too, is the aspect of potential doctor stoppages, right? In terms of the damage accumulated, all the new aspects that have already been discussed there. But kind of talk about if at any, like how significant adding doctor stoppages could be for the game?
Yeah. So it's going to be, doctor stoppage to be very realistic. So essentially what our damage system allows us is when you take huge shots or accumulation of strikes to a certain region of the face, it's going to cause a cut or swelling, just like it would in real life. And there's going to be certain strikes that have cut properties to them, right? So like an elbow. We know that elbows cut very often. So elbows in our game will have the same properties. So the type of damage can lead to vision penalties or breathing penalties. And if you aggravate them enough, it could lead to a doctor stoppage. But we also have like cut resistant attributes as well in the game that we've added this year. So a fighter like a Nick Diaz would get cut very easily off of many strikes. But a fighter like Anderson Silva would have a high cut resistance attribute because he doesn't get cut very often in this fight. So like much like our damage system, there's going to be no luck involved in doctor stoppages. It's all going to be based very real on the damage that's happening to you in the fight. So you have the opportunity to change your game plan. If you have a big cut over your eye, you know that your vision's compromised. You know that rounded strikes on the same side are going to be, your block is going to come up a bit slower because that's the impact of vision penalties. So you know that, hey, I better go for a takedown now because my vision's compromised. I can't see.
Sorry, unless you're playing stand and bang mode, Ramen, like you alluded to in the last video, then you can't go for a takedown. So how are you going to change that game plan if you've got a cut and you need to get out of the striking exchange? You can't go for a fucking
Strike
takedown.
coming this way, I got to go for a takedown. So it's going to change the gameplay meta. Instead of users fighting for health events like they would on UFC 4, one strike can change the momentum of the fight, and that's what I think everyone is waiting to feel and want to see with UFC 5, and they'll get to see that.
Well, I kind of hope something like that is coming. You know, like I say, that they tend to be leaning into this damage system. Maybe they're trying some new things out with the vulnerability system. But you know, when he was saying there about like a Nick Diaz might have like not as good cut resistance as like say like an Anderson Silva. You know, we see Nick and Nate. They can't walk into the cage without like a soft wind blowing on them, and then they get a some kind of horrific cut. So cuts are stat based, or how easily it is to be cut is going to be stat based. But I'm pretty sure it was like that in like I remember in career mode. You can like up the fucking put dump points into like your cuts and stuff. Fight Night Champion was another one. Cuts, heart, all those like just basic stats that we get in these kind of games. So what's the new thing about this? I'm just not seeing it.
With any game that's a multiplayer, I feel like a big question that always comes up is, what's there to do in terms of those that are competitive gamers, right? That mainly like to play online and compete and get, different bonuses and bonus points and all that stuff and make your way up the ladder. What's there to do now that's new in UFC 5 for those competitive gamers that like to just focus on, grinding and playing online?
So the people's eyebrow went up. It looks like Pirates of the Caribbean's going to step up and take this.
Yeah. So Ranked Championships is making a return this year, but the brand new, I'd say the new hotness would probably be online career. Which we really strive to make an extension of the fan experience. So leading up to Fight Week and after, players will be able to engage in Fight Week challenges. They'll earn rewards through those challenges, such as vanity emotes for their created characters and different customization options for their player cards. But
those are the only two things mentioned there. So vanity customization options, such as for your player card, so your stupid little fucking card that shows you your gamer tag and you can have a little picture on it, and emotes. I wish he would have said customization options for your character there, because that's one thing that was severely lacking in UFC 4 was the customization options. That was extremely bare bones. But yeah, player cards and emotes.
The big selling point for competitive play is the introduction of fighter evolution. So that's a mechanic that we've taken from career mode. It's our fighter progression system, where you engage with the system to spend your evolution points to upgrade attributes and stats and buy perks. And so that'll be an area where players can compete in created fighter versus created fighter heads up. And that will be ranked. There'll be leaderboards. I'd say the last thing to mention about the fighter evolution system is that there's also a prestige mechanic. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. So once you reach your level cap, you'll be able to prestige, increasing your level cap and allowing you to grow your fighter in new, different ways.
So again, he touched on the CAF versus CAF online, this online career mode thing. It sounds like it's going to just be pure created fighters. Like, are you just gonna be going up against other people's created fighters, or just like random NPC CAFs that the game sort of makes, like when you play a career mode and it'll just make in like your WFA career and leading up to your UFC debut, it'll just have like a bunch of just randomly made randomly made CAFs that the game has made. So it's nothing to do with, are we going to have community CAFs fighting? Like, you're going to be going up against other people's CAFs here? Like, and then you can prestige it. You can prestige once you fully rank up. You can just do it all again.
A couple more questions for me. Once again, I really do appreciate the time. I want to ask you, because obviously, this is focusing on PS5 and the new Xbox and current generation consoles. But I want to ask you, like, are there any plans as of right now to add, like a PC port to the game and address that audience? Because I know there's a lot of UFC fans that like to primarily play on PC. So what's kind of, your response to that?
Yeah, at the moment, we do not have any plans for PC. Again, with the focus really on nailing this experience of UFC 5 on the current gen consoles and focusing on how Frostbite was going to enable us to do that and how we've translated that into the meta gameplay experience that Rama was talking about earlier. The entire team has really been focused on making sure we nail that experience. PC is something that we always talk about, so we'll continue to have those conversations moving forward.
Oof, PC community getting the shitty end of the stick there. It's like, he said PC things are something we always talk about. What, for 4 games? It's like, how long has it been since EA UFC 1 up to UFC 4? How many years is that? I can't quite think off the top of my head when the first... So you've been talking about PC since then, and we've still not had like a PC version of the game. We get like FIFA on PC. That's an EA Sports title, and do we get the sort of the basketball games and the is there an EA basketball? Oh, I'm thinking of 2K, aren't I? Sorry, wrong fucking franchise. But I feel bad for the PC community. Like, I'm a console scrub. I've grew up on consoles since I was little, but in the past like 2 years, I've got myself a PC, and I've been really enjoying PC gaming. So I consider myself a PC gamer as well as a console gamer. And I feel sad, like, because I can't help but think what modders will do with a game like this. First of all, I think they'd fix a lot of the things that need assessing that the devs don't give us. So they'd just be able to. It'd be a completely different game if modders could get their hands on this. Whether that be mechanically, some people are really talented in that regard, or just like visually by like. Maybe you could have like a fucking... I'm sure someone would already have in mind a mod for the look of the old school UFC, so kind of like the Just Bleed era, when like Mike Goldberg was commentating and you'd have that sort of gold sort of aesthetic to, the UFC logo, and the days before Reebok and Venom fight kits. I'm sure a modder was already itching to... chomping at the bit to make a mod like that, if you look at Undisputed 3, I mean, that was already set in that era, but there's been like sort of reverse mods now where the Venom era fight kits are getting added to Undisputed 3. If you want to see stuff like that, go and look at there's a channel called UFC Veteran. He's working on I think the UFC Legacy, he was calling it at one point, and it's like modded like Venom fight kits, fighters, the current roster into Undisputed 3. If you've got the sort of the PS3 emulator for the PC, or you've got a PS3 that can run any kind of homebrew or gold hen, you can get access to any of those mods if you've got if you can use those two means of getting at the game. So like I say, PS3 emulator, or a PS3 with like modded homebrews. You know, I've got it for my PS3 there, and you know, I've made some changes, added the DLC characters that way that were once lost. You know, you can't get that now. If you bought the game secondhand off eBay or whatever, you can't get the DLC characters. But if you get it through an emulator, or you get it on a PS3 with the appropriate software installed on it, you can get all that shit back. But yeah, I just feel bad for the PC community. They could have added some really, really amazing things to this game, and it's just like we're 5 games in now, and they're still not getting a shout. And it's something that he said there. He said we're always talking about the PC. What for this long? And you've not made the jump. Come on, lads.
I gotcha. And last question from me. I kind of want to just get your final thoughts on upcoming UFC 5, where people can check out new and current info on the game and learn more about it.
EASports.com/UFC.
Okay, kind of a weird question there, and an even weirder camera cut. Did you see the cut then? And then 60 FPS Bassi took over. So there you have it. I just thought I came across this second interview and I thought I'd just go through it. I've not been as brutal this time. You probably picked up on that. You know, I tried to keep my emotions in check a little bit. You know, I want this game to be good. I'm not trying to insult anyone when I'm roasting the devs. It's all just a bit of fun. You know, it's a bit of banter and whatnot, and just taking the piss. But at the same time, I see red mist, and it brings me piss to a boil when devs just give us like cookie cutter. Like, they're scared to say certain things because they know it's not what the community wants, and they're going to piss the community off if they actually say what's really in the game. I hate all that shit, and ignoring, like they like to say ad nauseum, that they listen to community feedback and they like to add things in if enough of the community wants it. But, you know, the community's been screaming for a new ground submission system since UFC 4. Since Undisputed 3, basically. They want that old system back. You know, people like myself asking for Pride mode, and they've not delivered. So I don't believe them when they say they listen to the community. So, yeah. But there you have it. That's another developer interview. If anything like this comes up again, I'll be sure to go through it with you. But hopefully the next video I'm talking about with you will be some kind of like gameplay reveal, and we can go over that together and have a look. And maybe I'll have egg on my face when it comes to watching that video. Maybe things will look great, but I don't have that much confidence, but we'll see. I'll gladly eat my words if I'll take everything back that I've said, but that remains to be seen. So until then, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. Look after yourselves. I'll see you in the next one.